This was the girl's very first time soliciting on the street. A more experienced worker nearby raised her arm, lifted her skirt slightly, struck a provocative pose, and reached out toward people walking by. To stand out against the competition next door, she had to be more alluring. This was a girl who had been trafficked into a brothel, and this was the routine she was forced to follow to attract clients. At that moment, an elderly man walked past the entrance. The instant he saw how young and unsure she looked, he realized it was her first night, and without hesitation, he became her first customer. Ganga managed to secure a client within just 3 minutes of stepping outside. That evening, the madam received a large payment and handed 20% of it to Ganga, but instead of keeping it, Ganga burned the money. She told the madam she wanted to destroy who she used to be. As the flames rose, they consumed the last traces of her innocence. That very night, she abandoned her old identity and renamed herself Gangu. Not only did she secure a foothold in the red light district, she would eventually rise to become a dominant figure, an underworld queen who controlled the district itself. Even more remarkable, this story is rooted in real events, the life of Mumbai's infamous queen. A woman once sold for just 87 rupees would go on to lead an entire district, gaining both wealth and influence and becoming the legendary Gangubai in the eyes of many women. In India, adding Bai after a name is a mark of deep respect, almost divine reverence. Gangu earned that title. She was the only woman from her profession ever received by the president and the first to push toward legalization of the red light district. Even today, statues of her are still honored by many, but she hadn't always lived like this. Gangu was once born into privilege. Her father was a lawyer and she dreamed of becoming a film star. Her boyfriend, Nick, used that dream against her, telling her his aunt was a producer who could help her break into the industry. Believing him, Gangu stole jewelry from her family and followed him. But after leading her into a rundown building, Nick suddenly made an excuse and disappeared. Moments later, 2 large men appeared. Terrified, Gangu ran into a nearby room, only for the door to be locked from the outside the second she entered. Locked inside a dark room, Gangu screamed for help, but no one came. She remained trapped for 2 full days and nights before discovering the horrifying truth. Nick had sold her for 1,000 rupees. The woman she thought was his aunt, Sheila, was actually the madam of the brothel. When Sheila saw Gangu's stubborn and strong-willed attitude, she wasted no time breaking her down. She splashed water on her face and told her plainly what kind of place she had entered. Gangu was given 2 days to decide whether she would obey or resist. But there was no real choice. In India, a woman who enters a brothel is often seen as permanently disgraced. Returning home would mean shame, rejection, or even death. With nowhere to go, Gangu's hope of escape collapsed. She was forced into the life she never chose. She numbly applied makeup and began working. Yet because of her educated background and natural presence, she quickly stood out. She became one of the top earners almost immediately. Men would chase after her on the streets, demanding more of her time, as if she had no right to refuse. At first, she resisted violently, fighting back against those who treated her like an object. But people only saw her as hysterical, never as a human being trying to defend herself. That was when she understood the truth. Within this world, she had no rights at all. From that moment, something inside her shifted. She stopped resisting in the same way and began choosing powerful, wealthy clients instead, finding ways to extract money and influence from them. Soon, she was covered in gold and jewels, becoming second only to Sheila in wealth inside the brothel. But unlike Sheila, Gangu was generous. She shared her earnings and jewelry with the other girls, building quiet loyalty among them. Gangu, exhausted, asked for 1 day of rest, arguing that constant labor was unbearable. Her influence was already growing and she openly challenged Sheila's authority. That challenge created tension. Sheila never forgot it. And that same night, at around 4 a.m., a dangerous-looking man arrived at the brothel. Sheila, recognizing him as a violent client, deliberately assigned him to Gangu. The moment Gangu entered the room, the man revealed a gun. Something was wrong immediately. She tried to escape, but he grabbed her, slammed her against the wall, and brutally attacked her. Her screams echoed through the building while the others hesitated outside. Sheila did nothing to intervene quickly. She waited. Only when the violence had already escalated did she allow others to step in. By then, Gangu was severely injured, left with multiple stitches and a broken body. Instead of sympathy, Sheila warned her that danger was simply part of the job. But Gangu saw something else. She had been deliberately sacrificed. She earned money for the brothel, yet her life had been treated as disposable. While recovering in the hospital, Gangu was treated with disdain because of her status. The nurse showed open hostility toward her and even pushed her into a storage room, as if she were less than human. But Gangu refused to break. She stayed focused and began digging into who was responsible for the attack. She eventually learned the truth. The man who assaulted her was connected to Karim Lala's organization, one of the most powerful figures in the Mumbai underworld. Despite operating in both legal and illegal spaces, Karim Lala was known for valuing honor, and even police officers treated him with respect. Instead of hiding, Gangu made a bold decision. She waited along the road near a church where she knew he would pass. When Karim Lala finished his prayers and stepped out, he finally met her face to face. He did not dismiss her because of her status and listened to her carefully. Without hesitation, Gangu revealed her injuries and pulled back her clothing, exposing the deep scars across her body, proof of what one of his men had done. The sight shocked him. It wasn't her body that struck him, but the brutality behind the wounds. He had never seen violence carried out with such cruelty by his own network. Looking at her closely, he realized she was one of the top earners in the red light district. Yet now, her future had been destroyed. Her career was effectively over. Karim Lala offered her money as compensation, but Gangu refused. She was not there for payment. She was there for justice. That response impressed him. Instead of dismissing her, he made a rare decision. He accepted her as his adopted sister. From that moment on, she gained protection. His men would watch over her constantly. However, Gangu kept this hidden from Sheila, not revealing the new power she now had behind her. Once she had nearly recovered, Sheila brought the same violent client back again. Gangu demanded a higher price this time, but Sheila insisted the payment had already been arranged. Despite warnings from the other girls, Gangu calmly walked back into the room. But the man inside had not changed. He attacked her again almost immediately. This time, Sheila even increased the volume of music to drown out her screams. The violence continued unchecked. Suddenly, outside, a luxury car pulled up. It was Karim Lala. He entered without hesitation and ordered his men to drag the man out. What followed was brutal. He was beaten mercilessly as punishment for what he had done. Everyone watched in silence. They understood what it meant. Karim Lala had publicly taken Gangu under his protection, and she had deliberately set this moment in motion to show that she was no longer powerless. Sheila was shaken after witnessing what happened. Fear slowly overtook her confidence, and her health began to deteriorate under the pressure of everything unfolding around her. Still, business continued, and another client arrived requesting Gangu specifically. But Gangu was no longer under Sheila's control. Sheila, unwilling to lose income, ended up going herself, but soon after she suddenly collapsed and died in her bed. Her death marked a turning point for the entire brothel. With Sheila gone, the women turned to Gangu to manage everything, including the funeral arrangements. As they went through Sheila's belongings, they discovered the wealth she had secretly accumulated over the years. Instead of keeping it for herself, Gangu distributed it among the women. That decision changed everything. For the first time, the girls felt seen and respected. They gathered around her, offering white saris and asking her to take control of the brothel. What began as informal leadership quickly became a collective decision. Gangu accepted the responsibility. She reorganized the system and immediately began changing how things were run. One of her first major moves was confronting the police corruption that drained a large portion of the brothel's income. Previously, nearly 40% of their earnings had been taken by corrupt officers. Using her influence through Karim Lala, she pushed back against this system, and for the first time in the district's history, that money flow was cut off. From that moment, people began addressing her as Madam Gangubai. The name carried authority. Men no longer treated her carelessly, and she was no longer seen as someone to exploit. She had become a figure of control. But her leadership wasn't built on fear alone. Even other madams from nearby brothels began seeking her help in managing new girls. Instead of forcing anyone, she always gave them a choice, to stay and survive or return home. When some madams demanded payment for releasing girls, Gangu simply paid far more than required and took them away anyway, arranging for them to be sent home safely. To others, it made no financial sense, but to Gangu, it was strategy. She explained that it was politics. She was building reputation, influence, and legitimacy. Her goal was never just survival, but control over the entire system. Behind the scenes, she was positioning herself to become the head of the red light district. Real power, in her mind, was the only way to protect the women living inside it. However, she faced strong opposition from a rival figure named Razia, a powerful and respected leader who had already held authority for years and was preparing for another term. The competition grew tense as both sides began building influence. Razia used public demonstrations and religious backing to strengthen his position, putting pressure on Gangu's growing movement. Instead of trying to match Razia's public demonstrations, Gangu chose a different approach. She focused on building real economic strength inside the system. She worked through Karim Lala's network and introduced a liquor trade into the brothel's operations. The combination of alcohol and entertainment quickly turned into a powerful source of income. The business expanded fast, and soon the liquor side was earning even more than the core activities themselves. This became Gangu's second major rise in wealth and influence. With this new financial power, she began preparing for the larger conflict ahead. Her goal was no longer just survival or stability, it was outright control over leadership of the entire district. Karim Lala's continued support strengthened her position even further. In a rare gesture of trust, he even gifted her a luxury car and encouraged her to push forward with confidence in the coming political struggle. But opposition was also becoming more aggressive. Razia, realizing Gangu's growing influence, attempted to block her rise by reporting illegal alcohol activity, triggering a police raid on the brothel. Gangu remained calm during the pressure. She understood how the system worked and was already prepared for interference from law enforcement. Instead of panicking, she adjusted her strategy and continued building influence quietly. Razia then escalated things further. He confronted her directly, trying to intimidate her through reputation and religious authority. He made it clear that he had removed opponents before and would do so again if needed. But Gangu didn't back down. Instead of engaging him directly, she shifted the battlefield entirely. While Razia focused on speeches and gatherings, she disrupted his momentum by organizing free movie screenings across the city. Because of this, large crowds abandoned Razia's event, leaving his speech nearly empty. His carefully built influence collapsed in real time, not through confrontation, but through distraction and strategy. Enraged, Razia realized too late that he had been outmaneuvered. At that moment, Gangu arrived in a luxury car, calm and composed, carrying herself with full authority. She told him directly that his position would not last much longer. Her confidence was no longer symbolic. It was backed by money, alliances, and growing political influence. At the same time, she began planning something even more shocking, a wedding inside the brothel itself, an event designed to break every social expectation and shift public perception completely. Razia dismissed the idea as impossible, not realizing it was never about romance or celebration. It was about changing what people believed was possible. The plan for the brothel wedding wasn't about tradition or sentiment. It was a calculated move meant to shock society into reconsidering everything it believed. Gangu understood that defeating a powerful rival didn't always require direct conflict. Sometimes it meant reshaping perception itself. To execute it, she chose a bride from within the brothel's hidden world. The girl, Lisa, had been kept locked away since childhood by her mother, another prostitute who feared the dangers of the outside world. She was raised in isolation, only brought out in secret and then hidden again for protection. But Lisa was now 15, and the question of her future could no longer be avoided. In that world, daughters of sex workers had only two paths: either be abandoned or eventually forced into the same life. Her mother had tried to delay that fate, but time had run out. Rather than letting the cycle continue, Gangu saw an opportunity to break it. She decided Lisa should be married instead, giving her a different kind of future and using the moment to send a public message. The groom she selected was Bade, a young tailor she had encountered during her work. He was simple, soft-spoken, and inexperienced with women. His innocence reminded her of something she had long buried within herself. Although Gangu and Bade had developed a quiet emotional connection, she knew a real relationship between them was impossible. Her life and position made marriage unrealistic, so she chose to redirect that possibility into something else, creating stability for him instead. She went to his home and formally proposed the marriage arrangement, offering a large dowry of gold and cash. Bade was shocked and conflicted, while his mother immediately saw the financial advantage. Bade himself felt hurt. He believed he was being reduced to a transaction, stripped of meaning in the relationship he thought was personal. He struggled with the idea that love could be replaced by arrangement. But Gangu insisted it was not exploitation. It was a practical decision meant to secure both their futures. Even so, the emotional weight of the situation affected her deeply, though she refused to show it fully. Despite his feelings, Bade eventually chased after her, unable to accept the sudden separation. For him, it felt like love being taken away without choice. But for Gangu, the decision came from a different place. She believed personal attachment could not override her larger purpose, even if it cost her emotionally. The next day, the wedding took place inside the brothel itself. It was unprecedented, drawing massive attention and breaking every expectation of what that place represented in society's eyes. Publicly, it was a triumph. Strategically, it was a masterstroke that reshaped her reputation and weakened her rival's influence. Privately, however, it was painful. Watching Bade move forward with another life caused her emotional collapse, though she allowed herself only a brief moment to grieve before returning to her mission. The impact of the wedding was immediate and far-reaching. What had once seemed impossible had now actually taken place inside the brothel, and the entire district was forced to acknowledge Gangu's influence. Her move didn't just shock people, it shifted the balance of power. With Razia's authority weakened and public attention redirected, Gangu officially rose to become the new head of the red light district. Her victory wasn't the result of force alone, but of timing, strategy, and psychological control over perception. Once in power, she began reshaping the system from within. The first major change she made was dismantling long-standing corruption between the brothels and the police. For years, a large portion of earnings had been siphoned away through bribery and enforcement pressure. Using her political connections and her alliance with Karim Lala, she pushed that system out. For the first time, that money stayed within the community, marking a historic shift in how the district operated. Her authority quickly became recognized. People stopped referring to her casually and began calling her Madame Gangubai with respect. To many, this approach seemed financially irrational, but Gangu understood it differently. Each act of fairness strengthened her reputation and expanded her long-term influence, turning moral authority into political capital. As her reputation grew, she began interacting with journalists and outsiders who wanted to document her story. Her actions and history started reaching a wider audience, transforming her from a local figure into a public subject of discussion. A journalist eventually encouraged her to speak publicly, suggesting that she use her story to advocate for women in her position. At first, she was given a prepared speech, structured and polished for formal audiences. But when she stood before the crowd, she rejected it. The words on paper didn't reflect her reality. Instead, she spoke from experience, about the lives of women ignored by society and the struggles they endured daily. Her speech resonated deeply. It wasn't polished or academic, but it was real. That honesty earned her recognition far beyond her district, turning her into a voice for women who had never been heard. Her influence eventually reached political circles. A politician saw her impact and offered her a larger platform, using her popularity to strengthen his own campaign in exchange for introducing her to national leadership. This became her most strategic opportunity yet. Through him, she gained access to the highest level of authority, the president himself. When she finally met him, she made no attempt to soften her request. She spoke directly about the existence of women in the red light district and the need for their recognition and protection through legalization rather than rejection. After listening, the president acknowledged the reality she presented and agreed to her request, recognizing the need to formally legalize and regulate the system rather than ignore it. With that decision, a long-standing hidden world was officially acknowledged by the state. It was a turning point that validated the existence of the women she had spent her life protecting. Gangu's journey ended not in obscurity but in lasting recognition. Though prejudice would not disappear overnight, her actions ensured that the women she represented were no longer invisible. Her legacy remained in the district she once ruled, where her name continued to be spoken with respect long after her rise had ended.